What's up, gamers? I'm your host, Cobra, and this is our first look at the First Trip play demo. Gamers, Yuga Labs fucking did it! The playtest demo for the First Trip voyage was insane. Today we are going to break down my experience. I spent a full 90 minutes playing the entire demo, which really shocked me for a few reasons, but it was an absolute blast. I cannot believe how well executed and professionally run this entire event was. It's not like anything else that we have experienced in the Web3 space in coming up on 2 years now. Really cool. So we've got a whole bunch to dive into today. After the second half of the video is going to be a breakdown on the light paper. Yuga did have an announcement in store for us during the playtest demo, or rather right at the very end of the playtest demo. They published their light paper, which we are going to talk about in a whole bunch of detail. Now, let's start right at the very top with what is the Otherside First Trip playtest demo exactly. If you missed it or aren't familiar with a playtest in gaming, this is an opportunity for players to jump in and both stress out the system, but also experience the gameplay that has been developed so far. And it is a very normal and standard step in game development. However, in the Web3 space, especially for a metaverse where you are going to be hosting thousands, if not tens of thousands of players at the same time, that is pushing the limits in ways that other games really have never done before. This is breaking ground and pushing boundaries, and therefore there's going to be a lot of this testing that goes on because the partner for Yuga Labs, Improbable, needs a lot of feedback in terms of how the development is going. Since this was the very first one, I expected it to be really rough. Not so much because I didn't have faith that they could deliver, but because it's really only been about a month or so that they've been developing and that they've announced their partnership with Improbable Labs, and that just isn't a lot of time. Now, frankly, I didn't know very much about Improbable going into this, and shame on me because they are not really new to the space at all. They may not have made a big name for themselves in gaming just yet, but they've really been working towards this particular opportunity for the better part of a decade now, and that's what I didn't realize. Yuga was very smart in choosing a partner that had the technology and know-how to really ramp this up quickly and deliver an experience that we have never seen before. So why exactly were we shocked that the premier project in the NFT space continued to deliver at a very high level? The reason is twofold. Number one, games are hard. I've told you this many times, but game development is very tricky and very difficult, and frankly, Yuga Labs is not a game developer. That's why it was very important to see that they were going to reach out and find a partner to help deliver this project together with. And it turns out they picked a world-class partner because what Improbable delivered this past weekend was nothing short of incredible. Now, the reason why I am so high on what happened is twofold. Number one, from a usable metaverse perspective, what have we seen so far? Mostly Minecraft, if we're being honest. A lot of what is out there today really doesn't look terribly modern or impressive. That isn't to say it isn't fun or that those aren't great metaverses in their own right, but these do not look and feel the same at all. If you compare what we just experienced this past weekend with something like Sandbox or Decentraland, well, it's a very different experience, and I, for one, am incredibly shocked that they are at this stage already. I expected they would get there, but for a first demo to go this well is frankly shocking. there was no major hiccups at all that I am aware of. Obviously, the technical side of things is incredibly complicated, and there probably was some stuff out there, but nothing that we could feel or measure as a player. I had my connection drop once, but that was really due to the shitty hotel Wi-Fi that I was using. I switched to my hotspot, which isn't terribly fast or a strong connection either, but it was performing better than the hotel Wi-Fi was, and it ran spectacularly off of my iPhone hotspot for well over an hour. The entire demo was about 90 minutes long, and I switched a good 5 or 10 minutes into the playtest demo to my hotspot and had no issues from that point forward. There was a couple of times where you could see the frame rate drop a little bit, and there's a few spots where the graphics would get blurry and then sharpen back up again, but that is standard scaling and much preferable to just simply getting disconnected, which of course creates a really poor experience. The other thing that I can't stress enough, if you were not part of the demo this weekend yourself, or at least watching the live stream on Twitch, then you missed out on what was, in my opinion, the most professional and best executed anything that we have seen in the Web3 space. If we're being honest with ourselves, Web3 is very immature right now, and because of that, there's just not a ton of professionalism in the space. It's normal for things to start late. It's normal for things to go way over scheduled time. And it is very normal for something like a technical playtest demo to be choppy, if not outright inaccessible, especially for a first try. And to be honest, that's not a knock on anybody else. That's why you do these playtest demos. But I did not think that what we saw for the first trip demo was going to be anywhere near this level of polish. And I got to give props to the host because it was a very well run experience. If you don't know, my background is in corporate America, and specifically the tech sector. So I've been able to do a lot of this type of stuff in the Web 2 space, and to see that level of execution ported over to Web 3 was really refreshing. Now, when you look at it on paper, what we tested out over that 90 minutes really was not that in-depth, if we're being honest, but everything worked as intended, which is very impressive. And that means that when they go back to the development labs, which it's been a couple days, that has already happened now, they don't have to spend a lot of time going back and fixing things that didn't work or didn't work well enough. They can continue to move forward, which is fantastic for the timeline of actually having Otherside delivered and launched in full. The first thing that they absolutely had us do was test out the emote functions quite a bit. They had several different emotes available, ranging from a simple wave hello or a thumbs up to a full-on dance. They also gave you an option to show off the PFP you chose to connect. We used our May-C or chemical goo Otherside deed for our PFP during the project because we don't hold a mutant or an ape, but if you did, you had the option of showing that off and flexing a little bit during the demo, which plenty of people absolutely did. The one spot where I would say some work needs to be done is on chat, both text and audio. From a text perspective, if you're paying close attention during the videos I'm sharing here in the background, you're going to notice that a handful of times, in fact most of the times that I opened up the text chat, I got a weird symbol that was just auto-filling, and I would have to delete it a couple of times before I was able to actually type in there. I don't know exactly what was causing that. I tried to figure it out a little bit, but wasn't able to get to a root cause. I suspect it may have been related to the fact that I was almost always doing a full screen capture so that I could get lots of the video you're watching. For today's video, I can't confirm if that was actually the case or not, but it was a little bit annoying, and so I didn't really use the chat text very much. They also had us testing out the voice audio chat, which was pretty cool, but didn't work that well. So let me tell you what I mean by that. So Improbable has a feature where they can tell how close you are in relation to other users. And just like if you are in an actual crowd, if you start talking, the people in your immediate vicinity will likely be able to hear you. If they're further away, they're going to get drowned out by crowd noise. That is a really neat function. So in the future, if say we hosted a concert on the other side, then you would be hearing the music. And if you wanted to talk to a friend that was with you to your right, you would have to yell it to be heard over the music and the crowd, which makes it a much more lifelike experience and very interesting. It's also a really unique way to solve the problem of how do you have voice chat when there are thousands or tens of thousands of players at the same time. So we got to see how chaotic that can be when they're all in the same group, because pretty much every time they asked us to chat, we were in large groups of at least hundreds of users, if not thousands, in a single section. So like I said, that didn't work super duper well, but was impressive nonetheless, because I didn't think that that feature would be available on day one, and it was, and it did work, just was a little bit difficult because of the size of the group. I mentioned at the top that the networking was really, really strong. I was running off of an iPhone hotspot and was able to go for over an hour without any connection issues at all. To me, that is very, very impressive. And it also lends credence to the idea that you're going to be able to do this from a mobile device as well. And if that is true, then the scale that is available for this project becomes massively larger. The reality is a large portion of the world has gamers that don't have their own PC or laptop, but just about everybody has a cell phone, and nowadays those are all smartphones. So that means you've got the connection plus the computing power to actually boot up something that's browser-based. One thing that I did find interesting is it only worked with a Chrome browser. Luckily, we have Chrome installed on our MacBook as a backup browser, so that wasn't really a big issue at all, but not something that I expected coming in, and hopefully they'll have browser support for Firefox and others as well in the near future. One thing that worked really well was the controls. Now, I'll be the first to admit I don't play a lot of 3D games on a computer, so I am not very good with the ASDW controls or using the arrows. And for some reason, I didn't think to take out my magic mouse and make things a little bit easier, because that would have been an option as well. But running around, other than my clumsy control, was really, really smooth. They had walking, running, and sprinting speeds, which is great. Jumping was enabled as well as double jumps, which was also very cool. And the thing that I couldn't get enough of was using the jump pads. Now, you'll see in the video that there are all sorts of strategically placed jump pads to help you get around Otherside much faster. The reality is, if you want to have a big world, you need a way to traverse it quickly, because people don't want to spend 20 minutes running all the way across a huge expanse, no matter how fast you make the character. Flying helps, but that also makes exploration significantly easier. So the solution they've come up with is jump pads. They operate a lot like a teleport pad, except for you get the really satisfying view of watching your avatar fly across the screen, and you get a really great view of any of the terrain that you're going over. So I suspect that a lot of users, when they jump in for the first time, are going to have quite a bit of fun exploring simply by using the jump pads over and over to get around and visit lots of different places. Another thing that was a welcome surprise was they actually had quite a bit for us to do. Full disclosure, my expectations was that we were going to jump into the other side and run around aimlessly for 10 or 15 minutes, test out the different functions, get some screen records in, and be done with it. But the reality is the host took us through a whole host of different objectives that we worked on as a group. Now, I can't say for sure that what we were doing was actually influencing any of the outcome because there was no way to measure that. Like, for example, there was a part where a whole bunch of codas shot into the world, kind of like asteroids landing, and they were encased in a crystal that we had to break them free from before they could start roaming around the land. And to do so, we were testing out a bunch of different emotes. I believe it was mostly using the voice chat to scream into it and break open the crystal that way. Now, was anything that we were doing actually contributing towards accomplishing that goal? Maybe, or perhaps it was going to reveal regardless, even if 4,500 people stood there and didn't say anything. But either way, it was a fun experience to have some stuff to actually do. You had to explore around. The host led you around, so nobody really felt like they were lost, which made things really smooth and, like I said, professionally executed. The best objective by far was the evil coda boss battle that occurred towards the very end of the demo. Now, this was after we had traveled to the Shadowlands, which were very cool. It was really interesting to see the different area because it was much different. It was basically nighttime, a lot of glowing purple and blue, and really a very stark difference from the swamps that we started out in, which was great. The coda battle itself was basically after we had unlocked the obelisk. An evil coda showed up. It was supersized, and we had to work together as a group to defeat it. In order to battle the evil coda, we used a modified jump pad. Basically, they had a ledge that you could run off of, and it would launch your character in a very similar way to the jump pads, and then you would kind of barrel roll towards the evil coda, hit it, cause a little bit of damage, and then it would send you flying back, and you would have to reset and do it again. There were over 4,000 users all jumping at this evil coda at the same time. Lots of people missing. It wasn't an automatic hit sort of scenario. You actually did have to aim a little bit, but once we got the hang of it, we were able to get a lot of hits in, and quite frankly, it felt kind of like my group was the ones to finish it off. There was no health bar that we were able to see go down to 0, so who knows if that actually happened or not, but either way, it was a lot of fun. Now, if you participated in the First Trip playtest demo, then your Otherside NFTs, any of them that were in the wallet that you used to connect and participate with, were updated to show that you completed the first trip. There are going to be several more First Trip demos, so if you missed out, you have another opportunity for sure. In fact, I expect that they're going to provide several opportunities for each part of the journey in order to make it relatively easy for people to complete all 11 pieces and earn the reward that comes at the end of it. Now, what is that reward? We don't know for sure, but I highly suspect that it is going to be at least related to, if not directly, the second set of 100,000 deeds that will eventually go out. They previously said that those will be reserved for people that are software developers and building on Otherside, as well as voyagers that help along the way. Now, that doesn't guarantee anything, but those two things sound like they go together, and it would make a whole lot of sense. Now, That doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be a free airdrop, although I do think that that is a real possibility. It might simply be a whitelist spot to reserve your ability to purchase additional deeds. Either way, when we get to that stage, and I do expect it is well in the future, there's going to be a whole lot more land available, and at that point I would expect the demand to be far greater than it is today, which would mean that those deeds will be worth well north of the almost 3 ETH we see them going for today. We hope you found this informative and entertaining, and if you did, consider giving us a follow on Twitter. That's where I like to engage with the community and answer all of your questions about play and earn or Web3 gaming. Also, double check for me that you have hit that like and subscribe button below. It really goes a long way towards supporting the channel.